Welcome to a special episode of RIMScast. I am Justin Smullison, Business Content Manager at RIMS, the Risk and Insurance Management Society, and your proud RIMScast host. This episode is presented by Prudent Insurance Brokers Private Limited, and we will explore the growing challenge of ESG risks in today's world and its impact on businesses from a risk and insurance perspective. With rapid technological advancement, increased social outreach, and awareness on our fragile environment, it is critical that business leaders increase their focus on their organization's response to ESG. What are the key challenges posed by ESG risks for organizations? And what impact is ESG having on risk management and insurance? Joining me today to demystify these areas are Deepak Madan and Dev Bhutani from the Risk Consulting Division of Prudent Insurance Brokers Private Limited. Deepak, Dave, welcome to RIMScast. Deepak, what is ESG?
ESG may be the latest buzzword in the business, social, and political circles today. But ESG is an outcome of deliberations of past 2-3 decades, and it will be safe to mention that ESG is the new yardstick that will measure the performance of organizations on grounds of sustainability henceforth. A yardstick that the world has converged unanimously to.
Could you give us an example?
Yes, for the benefit of audience, let me expand it further. The environmental criteria considers how companies' operations impact the environment. For example, their energy use, waste management, pollution levels, consumption of natural resources. Social criteria examines how it manages a relationship with employees, suppliers, customers, and communities where it operates. Governance deals with companies' leadership, audits, internal control, systems, practices, and shareholder rights. While each of the three disciplines has its own set of standards and practices, together they indicate an organization's dedication to achieving the greater good. In a nutshell, ESG is about companies' model, such as how its products and services contribute to sustainable development. The larger issue the world is trying to solve through ESG is sustainability.
Why is ESG relevant for organizations now and in the future?
ESG was born out of actions in business community over several decades that culminated into our modern understanding of ESG today. The 1970s and 80s saw the beginning of various acts regarding environmental protection, especially in United States. Steps in the 1990s included United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Kyoto Protocol, which further developed into the Sustainability Accounting Standard Board and the Paris Agreement in 2015.
The emphasis on ESG is increasingly making global headlines, especially in the last few years. Would you agree?
Yes, major institutional investors are making it clear that they expect the companies they hold to commit strongly to ESG criteria. As per 2019 MSCI ESG rankings, companies considered as sustainability leaders exhibited both higher returns and less risk, while companies considered as sustainability laggards showed the opposite results. On May 22, 2020, the US Securities and Exchange Commission Investment Committee decided to create ESG disclosure framework for consistent and comparable information without the use of third-party rating agencies. Interestingly, in Japan, there is JPX Nikkei 400 index, known as the SHAME index, that identifies companies that don't comply with international disclosures and governance standards. Further, societal and consumer expectations are influencing businesses in stronger role in tackling ESG-related issues. ESG risks can have a major impact on organizations' financial status and shareholder value. And NYU Stern research shows a positive correlation between financial performance and strong ESG risk management policies and practices. The manner and velocity at which the complete ecosystem of investors, regulatory bodies, society, even consumers are pushing the business community to factor in ESG in their business strategies, it is crucial that ESG risks are considered not as a challenge to be looked at separately, but an integral part of business.
Deepak, awareness about ESG is greater than ever before. What do you believe organizations need to do to effectively operationalize ESG?
While organizations are indeed aware of ESG risks, I believe they are equally aware about both the sense of urgency and degree of planning it will take to implement a playbook for something which is here to stay. In my opinion, there are three things that the organizations need to do. Number one, adopting a suitable framework for measuring, monitoring, and disclosing performance in areas related to ESG. A growing number of countries are pushing companies and financial institutions to report their climate related risk on the mandatory rather than voluntary basis. Several reporting frameworks have been developed, including Climate Disclosure Standards Board, the Global Reporting Initiative, and most recently, the Task Force on Climate Related Financial Disclosures in 2015. As of Feb 2020, over 1,000 public and private companies, consisting of $138 trillion asset under management, have demonstrated their support to the TCFD.
All right, that was the first thing that organizations need to do. What's the second thing?
To have ESG included in the overall enterprise risk management. In recent article by RIMS, it was suggested that if an organization has sound and comprehensive ERM processes in place, leverage the same mechanism to identify, assess, and address ESG risk as well. This reduces friction in business lines and among people consuming reports, including your auditors.
All right, and what's the third and final thing that organizations need to do?
Integrate ESG with the overall risk culture and assign accountabilities. Many leading companies in India have begun to include environmental, social, and governance targets as part of the key result areas for top management when computing their variable pay. The move is influenced by an increasing push from investors to allocate capital that not only generates financial returns but is also invested in social good. Overall, non-financial factors are increasingly becoming a marker of material risk and growth opportunities for investors.
All right, Dave, over to you. As a risk management professional, what do you foresee as a roadmap or a possible mitigation plan for ESG risks?
So we all understand how complex and interrelated the world of risk is. So even before organizations step up to operationalize ESG, which may sound long term, they may realize that some of the risks connected with ESG have already started manifesting itself while others are on the anvil. For example, climate risk drivers, or for that matter, reputational risk for organizations which have suffered on account of environmental impairment that they have caused. It clearly indicates toward adoption of a three-pronged mitigation plan: shorter term, medium term, and long term. So on the shorter term, one may take guidance from disclosure frameworks from Task Force on Climate Related Financial Risk, that is TCFR, that may help you in identifying various climate risk drivers, further getting classified into physical and transition risks. Physical risks arise from changes in weather and climate that impact economies, while transition risk drivers arise because of transitioning to a low carbon economy and can include policy and regulatory changes, technological risk, market risk, reputational risk, and legal risk. While solutions such as risk modeling or insurance can play a key role in managing the impact of weather related risks, identification of these physical and transition risks is still an intermediate step in the risk management process, as these drivers lead to financial risk, including credit risk, liquidity risk, market, and operational risk.
All right, that was the short term. How about the medium term?
So these derivations may allow you to focus on next set of risks to tackle on medium to long term, such as focus on commitment toward ESG risks. And as per the State of Green Business Report 2021, the number of corporations supporting the TCFD have jumped more than fivefold from 282 in 2017 to over 1500 in 2020. And on a
That's
longer term, companies need to have focus on transition risk and bring the shareholders on board such decisions.
Dave, what is the relevance of ESG and regulatory frameworks in an Indian context?
So while the focus on ESG reporting in India is still being driven by European and other foreign investors, it is hoped that Indian institutional investors may step up soon. Like most countries, India's commitment to achieving sustainability and meeting its international environment targets has led to the formulation of various policies, which are expected to result in both risks and opportunities from an ESG perspective. For example, India's commitment to achieve net zero emissions by 2070, which has resulted in several government initiatives such as subsidies and other incentives for electric vehicle industry. Although India has done well so far as regards policy formulation, like most developing nations, India must contend with several ESG issues. And these further get compounded by the scale of country's population, its socio-economic diversity, and its growth ambitions. Higher quality ESG reporting by Indian companies is picking up pace. Various Indian organizations have announced measures with a plan to better ESG score, including green initiatives, commitment towards becoming carbon negative. That was on the investment side. On the regulatory side, the main framework driving sustainability related disclosures in India is BRSR, which is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. It's driven by SEBI, which is Security and Exchange Board in India. BSR, BRSR is built on the framework of MCA ESG guidelines. It derives inspiration from international reporting frameworks like the GRI standards and provides the detailed ESG data both on qualitative and quantitative side. It is in line with international standards and will serve as a single resource for sustainability reporting by listed companies. So under BRSR, thus far, the top 1,000 listed companies by market cap are required to annually file information on a mandatorily basis from the financial year 21-22. Outside of BRSR framework, there are very few mandatory ESG disclosures requirements in India, and these include disclosures regarding energy conservation, statements in the board reporting regards compliance with laws prohibiting sexual harassment. Another trend that is growing in India is ESG ratings. It complements the wider adoption of ESG reporting standards and increases in the volume of ESG disclosure by companies. It is not regulated though. It gets done by leading publishers such as MSCI, Bloomberg, and S&P, and CRISIL in India. How about smaller companies? For now, ESG reporting remains a priority for large listed companies, but smaller companies, particularly those seeking private investment from VC and PE funds, should also start thinking about their ESG risks and opportunities. In addition to this, even banks, ESG, they are considering bringing in ESG consideration, and they are expected to find their way into credit assessment by bank and other private lenders. In fact, India's banking regulator RBI is reportedly looking at issuing ESG based lending guidelines.
Dave, how is the insurance industry looking towards ESG risks and solutions?
So, insurance has an important but supporting role to play here, as organizations invest in new technologies to transition away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy sources. Renewable energy, electric vehicles, parametric insurance, and ESG related DNO liability coverages are some of the areas to focus for insurance. Existing insurance coverages and products continue to evolve along the new ones to address ESG risks. For those ESG risks where insurance is available, we've seen a significant increase in losses over the recent years, which in turn leads to increase in insurance premiums. On the contrary, the world's leading reinsurance market, Lloyd's, will not be providing new insurance cover in respect of coal-fired power plants or coal mines from 1st January 2022. This also applies to companies with business models which derive at least 30% of their revenues from either coal-fired power plants or coal mines from 1st January 2030.
Dave, how is Prudent Insurance Brokers looking at helping organizations with ESG?
So, as one of the leading brokers and risk advisors, we guide our clients in identifying and integrating various ESG risk factors. insights from our risk assessment study that helps in mitigating losses from the growing number and range of ESG risks, while also assisting in structuring appropriate insurance solutions wherever available.
All right, Dave, we've learned a lot today about ESG. How can interested organizations reach out to you to learn more about ESG risks and related risk management solutions?
So they can write to us at consulting@prudentbrokers.com or click on www.prudentbrokers.com. Thank you.
Special thanks again to Deepak Madan and Dave Bhutani for sharing their insights on ESG. Remember that you can reach out to them by emailing consulting@prudentbrokers.com. Prudent Insurance Brokers Private Limited is the composite broker registered with IRDA of India and does not underwrite the risk or act as an insurer. Prudent's team offers you a chance to compare the best insurance policies, services offered by leading insurance companies, and then buy a plan. Insurance is a subject matter of solicitation. For more information, visit www.prudentbrokers.com.